of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Right now, it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I am your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Roku TV, anywhere there is sound to be found on the internet. We are around to be found on the internet. With that said, it is Wednesday, and Wednesday we put a spotlight on some of the amazing people at the Law Enforcement Against Prohibition organization, an illustrious group of people that are dedicated to ending this war on drugs. And my joint host, Judge Lenny Frieling, is also a member of that organization, and he's going to be leading our joint conversation here on Time for Hemp. Good morning, Your Honor.
Casper Leitch, my friend. Thank you. Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Well, you bring a lot to the table when you come, so we appreciate having you as our joint host as well.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Today, it is our honor to have, with respect, James Meissner. James has been with our U.S. Coast Guard. He's been law enforcement. He's a LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition speaker, leap.cc. He's been involved in the drug war from many different points of view. And James, this show, on the one hand, there are times when we are lighthearted. There are times when I just don't have it in me to not be funny if I think it will get a laugh. But let me ask you just straight out, is there anything really funny about the war on drugs?
First of all, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. And no, it's not a funny issue at all. It's it's 100 years of lies and deceit, and the last probably 20 years, it's really affected our country more than anything else ever, I think, with regards to incarceration and taking away our rights. It's really not a laughing matter.
Let me ask you something. I'm thinking historically. I'm thinking, say, England, London, 1700s. Bobby's walking down the street with a nightstick. Does that officer of the law know the people on the beat, know the people on the street? Is yes? So.
Yeah, I would imagine there was a quite different officer of that day as compared to today.
Now, you say different, and I know this is leading questions, and I know I'm setting you up, but I'm a courtroom lawyer at heart, so it's hard to get beyond it. Is it fair to say that generally the people that were the civilians that lived there had a positive, working, mutually helpful relationship with the LEOs, the law enforcement officers of the time? Am I out on third base somewhere on Yankee Field torn down, or?
No, I'd suspect you're pretty much correct. You know, when law enforcement officers came about, they were called peace officers, and they held the peace in communities, and they held strong relationships with those communities, and today there's a huge I guess divide there, and it comes a lot with the war on drugs. It's created a huge divide from racially to financially to, I mean, it's just, and you have law enforcement officers not getting the respect that they deserve in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases, the same law enforcement officers are abusing their power. So it's a tough situation for both sides.
Who benefits? Do civilians benefit from that? Do criminals benefit? Do law enforcement benefit from this breakdown in a cooperative relationship? Who's it good for?
Well, currently we're in a prohibited society. The only people that are being benefited right now is the criminal underground. I mean, the law enforcement community has their hands tied, and the civilians are fighting a losing battle, and the government's in the middle and holding it that way. Right now, I absolutely think that the criminal underground or the prohibited market is the one that's winning. You know, you can't have freedom and drug-free at the same time. You know, you can have one or the other. And we can't keep guns, or we can't keep drugs out of our schools if we can't keep them out of our prisons. It just doesn't make any sense.
My first exposure to our LEAP friends in person, live and in person, was International Drug Policy Conference in Albuquerque. A young couple, younger than me, they were only 95. A younger couple came up to me and were chatting with me at the LEAP table and had just gotten out of prison. And I said, if this is rude, don't answer me, but I have to ask if it's okay. I hear stories, and the stories I hear are that drugs, where people go to prison for drugs, are easily available in prison, maybe more easily available than out of prison. And the woman looked at me, it was husband and wife now, and she said, well, I went into prison as a meth addict, and I came out as a heroin addict. Oh, man. This simply can't
true.
be the right answer.
You've got a bunch of these drug dealers, and they're all locked up together, and it's just like putting all these minds together. Of course, they're going to find ways to get it in, and they're going to reap the rewards of being in jail and supplying drugs to anyone that needs it in the jails. You know, an addict is going to get their drugs regardless of what the law says. You know, the people that want to do drugs are going to do drugs. I think that's the biggest reason that we've got to change it from a criminal justice aspect, and it needs to be more under a health aspect and seen as a public health concern.
Do you mean drugs, like are prescribed or illicit, have something to do with a health problem? Damn, you are radical. Wow.
I know, right?
Oh, man. Lock those suckers up. They did heroin. They subjected themselves to a random arbitrary death penalty. Lock those suckers up. They ruined my day.
Yeah, could you imagine if everybody was going around getting locked up for drinking alcohol? I mean, we went through this once, and we saw how that ended. And, you know, that's kind of where we're at in the same sense with the drug wars. We've come to that tipping point where, you know, we're as a society, we're not going to take it anymore. We're wasting our money, and it's been a huge failure. We've not done anything. The drug use in America is right around the same as it has been since we began this. It's not gotten any better. We have, 44,000 people dying every day of pill abuse and opioid overdoses and prescription drugs. And, when we don't put any focus on that, yet no one's died of cannabis, and it's the most dangerous drug listed. That's just outrageous. It doesn't make any sense.
We have a 5,000-year history of which we're really pretty confident that there has not been one single death from overdosing on THC on cannabis. The latest numbers out of Colorado, I think it's true nationally, I'd rather be cautious. The latest Colorado numbers, underage use is down. It's
Absolutely.
Down. Our drinking...
They've done studies on this for years now with regards to states that have legalized medical cannabis, and it's shown every single time that as states get progressively more lenient with their cannabis laws, including medical cannabis, the taboo is erased, and it's not as much of a turn-on for kids, and it's not, you don't see these influxes in youth use like prohibitionists will tell you is going to happen. It hasn't happened, and it hasn't happened in every single state. So, it's another thing they're wrong about.
Well, actually, that level of consistency, when 50 states get the same result, and it fails in 50 states, that level of consistency, it seems to me, statistically, not my strength, that makes a pretty strong statement that it doesn't work. If the percentage of success is 0, I might tend to say, well, that didn't work. And one of the signs of insanity is to do something and get a result, do it again, get the same result, and to keep doing it, expecting a different result. Well, that's insanity. And that's what we're doing with the war on drugs. Let me ask you this. In your years in law enforcement, did you have any involvement with dealers at moderate levels?
As a law enforcement officer, I spent 8 years in the Coast Guard and was all over the Southeast at small boat stations. Most of what I was tasked to do was patrol areas for recreational boater safety. And, of course, we spent countless hours out on the water looking for boats that may have been listed on the NCIC watch list or that were suspected of smuggling drugs or smuggling immigrants and whatnot. And honestly, in the 6-ish years that I spent along the Gulf Coast doing law enforcement, I've never really ran across any significant bust, and that's pretty much the norm throughout the entire Coast Guard. We spend so much time, effort, money, resources, tax dollars, put our law enforcement officers in risk, and for the vast 95 to 98% of all these patrols yield nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yet when they have a big bust once or maybe twice a year, they'll parade that all over the news like it's something happens every day. And that kind of gives you an idea of exactly how much money we're wasted. Kind of the fruits of the labor are not there. We're not getting anything for all of our wasted efforts, and it's not changed the landscape of the war on drugs in any way.
Let's shift the focus just a little bit. The Coast Guard, in its role to help small, medium, and large vessels on the water, when they send you out and say, all right, time to go out, ladies and gentlemen, because, somebody might need some help here, and that's what we're tasked to do, and that's what we're doing. Did that tend to happen when the seas were calm, running 2 feet, or did that tend to happen when the seas were running 12 feet and raining and blowing 25 knots? When were they sending out?
Typically, the patrols would typically be more during calm weather, but that's not to say we weren't called out during all types of weather. I've spent many hours underway in 12-foot seas towing sailboats, but typically we go out, in nice weather to do our patrols. We do get out to do training and stuff in rougher weather. But that's what we should have been focusing more on instead of spending, entire days with multiple resources and officers looking for a boat that wasn't even there. We could have been out doing safety inspections and ensuring that all these boaters were actually out there being safe and ensuring the lives of all these boaters. There's plenty of tasks that we could have done that would have actually been beneficial to the public that pays our salaries.
James, I want to say something to you. I've been out in 42-footers in 12-foot seas, and I have to tell you, a 42-footer can be the smallest little putt-putt runabout I have ever seen in my life when you stick it in a 12-foot sea. So as somebody that has been out there in terror, I have to say this to you. Thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
One thing I couldn't figure out,
I can remember many a times where I was the only one standing up at the coxswain's chair, and everyone else was down below, either sick or didn't want to get up. Or
oh man, it is hard to conceive how much a little bit of water at 12 feet, right? It is hard to conceive of what that can do to a decent-sized sailboat.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. So thank you. And I'll tell you what I couldn't figure out. The day that I was tied in as the hurricane was blowing into the Columbus Day Regatta, when we lost some people, the day that we were out there, I was looking, as I recall it, off the starboard bow at the Miami hotels. And I was just picturing the guys in the penthouse and the women in the penthouse ordering room service. May we have another martini, please, so we can laugh at those morons that are out there in these stupid boats as this hurricane is coming in behind them. This is the best entertainment we've seen. And what I couldn't figure out is I was tied a tiller, and I just couldn't figure out. Actually, it was a wheel. I couldn't figure out how to get from there down to the radio below deck without leaving the helm. And nobody else on board knew how to sail. And the one guy had ripped his rotator cuff. And how do you write a will and not let go of the wheel? It was a real problem. So I'll say it for the last time for today. James Meissner, thank you for being out there to help the morons like me and the smart people.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had some great times on the water. I miss it being out there. After 9/11, things all changed with the Coast Guard. A lot of the emphasis wasn't so much on drugs as it was on terror and homeland security. We went from the Department of the Navy or the Department of Transportation when we weren't under wartime to the Department of Homeland Security. So a lot of our efforts went and transitioned over to more port security and homeland security, and not so much out looking for drug smuggling boats, but it's still one of the top priorities in the Coast Guard. It's one of their main missions, and lots of money is thrown at it. In fact, they're the #1 maritime drug enforcement agency in the U.S., so it's a lot of money in the drug war is funneled through the Coast Guard. And like I said, it's been a huge waste, and I think the Coast Guard should take a stronger approach towards safety instead of public and boater safety instead of drug use and going after these smuggling boats, because you just can't catch them. You can't catch them all, and it's really just a waste of effort and time to continuously throw money at the wall and hoping it sticks, and doing those insane efforts, as you put it.
Well, speaking of throwing money at a wall and hoping it sticks, that's what we do when it comes time to pay the budget around here. We get a handful of cash, throw it on top of whatever bills it lands on. That's what gets paid here at Time for Hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Ganja, baby. Yeah, 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 yeah. I am a ganja baby, a ganja lady. I love to burn, 'cause I love to learn. The weed opens up my mind, and I ain't chalice. Soon me be like ganja palace in the wonderland like the one Alice love the cannabis. Why? I am a ganja baby. Sometime me friend them call me ganja lady. Smoking that it's the best for maybe. Blazing every day, every day. Baby, friend them call me ganja lady. Lady, it's no buts, no baby. Blazing every day, me ganja crazy. The herb is so rare. If you have it in abundance, please come and share. Let the smoke go up to the air, 'cause we don't care. We have no fear to blaze the marijuana. Up the child, we'll blaze the sensimania. Blaze up the kiki, love when she fat and sticky. She pretty and me love her straight to nitty gritty itty. I am a ganja baby. Sometime my friend them call me ganja lady. Smoking, smoking, baby. Blazing every day, every day. Ganja baby, ganja lady. It's no buts, no maybe. Every day to me ganja crazy. She says it's the best in the north, south, the east and the west. Relieve the stress and no other thing can test. Give me the herb, it's good for the nerve. Helps me to observe round the corner and curve. I see Babylon try come fi mash it down. Me ganja business, them wa crash it down. Sense this, sense that, and me hash it down. With this one me have to get ganja, come na play around.
You've been listening to Ganja Baby. Babies, there's a time before the ganja. Let me say that. It's always time for ganja here on Time for Hemp. Our network is like a great joint. We're always best when you share us with your friends. You can find us on Google+, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio. If you've got a WordPress website, we got a WordPress plugin you can use to share us with your friends right there on your website. So go to timeforhemp.com, check out all the ways you can share us and all the things that we do, and let everybody know how important it is to end prohibition. With that said, I'm going to pass this joint chat back over to my joint host here on Time for Hemp. Lenny, Your Honor.
It's always a pleasure to do another smoking show.
Yeah,
it's
baby.
Always a pleasure to do another smoking show. All right. Question. We hear about Coast Guard interdiction. We hear about Coast Guards running around on, pretty nice-sized boats, that high-speed, nice-sized boats. We hear about the air support, small planes, volunteers. And I'm thinking primarily Caribbean Gulf, that part of the Florida, southern United States, Louisiana. We see great stuff on TV, carts pulling people out of storms from helicopters. I have to ask, do rescues at sea, whether it's a 20-footer or a 90-footer, is that something that Coast Guard staff, volunteers, is that rare? Do they see it? What's the reality?
Well, the reality is in my 8 years in the Coast Guard, I was part of over 1,500 search and rescue cases, saving hundreds of lives, and responsible for $1 million in property salvage. So it's pretty accurate. You do see it all. I mean, every day. A lot of that it may be where someone broke down, and because we had to tow them out for fear that they might get washed onto the rocks, that's considered a search and rescue case. Or it could be that 14-foot sailboat that's out in 16-foot seas and their mast is broken, they're listing and they're taking on water, and that's a little bit more serious. But yeah, it happens all the time. I mean, every time we're on duty for 2 or 3 days at a time at a small boat station, we generally will have at least a case or two. And I personally was never a rescue swimmer like you saw in the movie with Ashton Kutcher and whatnot. But yes, that is exactly the way it works, and that's a very realistic movie as far as their training goes and how they get trained for those types of things. But that's what we as the Coast Guard should be spending more of our time. And I noticed that up until 9/11, we had a huge budget to go out and look for drugs, but we were still operating on boats that were 30 and 40 and 50 years old. And now that 9/11's passed, and it seems like under the Department of Homeland Security, we've gotten a lot more budget to upgrade our equipment and our vessels. So I've seen a lot of vessels get upgraded in that time. But we should have been spending all that money that we've spent on the war on drugs on upgrading that long before 9/11 happened. That's a perfect example of what the money could have been used for.
I am just the more I hear you talk, the better I feel about the Coast Guard doing its assigned mission. 8 years, not the entire United States Navy, your participation involved 1,500 or so rescues. Thank you again.
Thank you.
That's a big number. And
it was awesome just to be a part of it and be on the boat and be on the water and be able to help people. That's what drew me to it originally. And I think the law enforcement may have drove me away. That and Katrina. I was stationed in New Orleans for 3 years the day after Katrina hit, and that was rough. Law enforcement, again, I was on a construction tender, but due to the nature of Katrina and the amount of problems that was going on over there, my law enforcement experience was much needed, and we outfitted the boat with weapons and had to train everybody on the boat, in use of force and whatnot. So that carried over from, being at the small boat stations to actually over in New Orleans after Katrina and doing construction work. But, yeah, I loved it right up until Katrina. 3 years of that was enough. I had to get out after that and try something different.
If it is polite, I hope it's polite for me to ask, is it PTS kind of stuff after something like Katrina that would lead a hero in position you've been in to say, all right, 3 years, that's good. I've done what I can do.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and a lot of people want to relate PTSD to combat, and of course veterans in general, or combat veterans especially. And yes, it's true, and they are more easily diagnosed because their situations are well known. The PTSD is apparent in so many people, and I absolutely feel that I've suffered from it a little bit, with regards to the amount of casualties that I've seen, and even just the lives lost, and of course the experiences that I had in New Orleans. It was crazy out there. I don't know if you got the chance to go out there at all after Katrina, but it was just crazy. It really was. Everything was gone, and just to see people's lives destroyed and torn apart like that was hard to just cope with.
I'm thinking of it on two levels. I'm thinking not only the sheer mass of the tragedy. How does one get their heads around that? And the answer is, you probably don't. Your brain says, I think a little PTSD might help protect my sanity here. Time for that. It's the mass of the tragedy. And then you add to that, not a week, not a month, but years. Oh, man. How much can you push a person before their brain says, this is perhaps not such a good thing for my mental health? This is problematic.
Yeah, it definitely weighs on you. It takes a special person to be able to get through a lot of that stuff, and that's why, these veterans and these people that work in law enforcement and rescue and paramedics and whatnot, man, these are great, special people, and they should be respected. And that's why I want to end the war on drugs, so we can get back to that respect that we should have for our law enforcement community, and vice versa. Have the law enforcement community actually respect and stick up for the rights of the civilian.
When a law enforcement officer, when a uniform knocks at my door, I do not want to think, oh man, did I leave a roach in an ashtray? What I want to think is, officer, how can I help you?
Right. What can I do to help?
You just tell me. That's my job. I'm a civilian. How can I help you? I've had clients react that way. Officers were charging over fences, through backyards, looked in a window in the greenhouse in his backyard and saw his small personal grow, and they busted him for it. All right, whatever. They did. His attitude for me to relay to the DA was, I would rather they looked in my window and I have to go through this because they're looking for some fool with a large knife going through backyards. I have kids. I'd rather they went after the guy with the big knife and protected me than, they found my grow. Now, to their credit, the DA's office dealt with it so appropriately. I was quite impressed. Right direction. But at the end of the day, most people might not think that way. And how does that help any of us? How does searching out? Oh, let me ask you this. You're in an airplane. You're in a cruiser. You're in a decent size, smaller for you guys, 50-foot boat, and you're out there searching. Did you find these 1,500 rescued boats? Did you find them coincidentally because you're out there riding around, or was it response to the electronic, help me now, please very much, electronic kind of a beacon?
I would say the majority of them would have been in response to radio call-outs or an EPIRB or some type of a search and rescue beacon of some kind. But we did get calls while we were on patrol. There was plenty of times where we happened upon people that were in distress. So, but I would say a vast majority of them were radio calls or rescue beacons.
And my point is there a positive purpose? Is there rescue profit to be made by just having a bunch of people out there powering around, looking around with the radar with the small planes? The question in a nutshell is this. If in the process of being out there and searching for the random cocaine cigar boat, you ended up with this huge number of rescues, I might be inclined to say, all right, pretty efficient use of Coast Guard resources. On the other hand, I'm hearing the opposite, which is we rescue people when they call for us by radio, and then we find them and go get them. And this random searching, whether it works for drugs or not, is not the way we execute rescues successfully in significant numbers. That's what I'm hearing.
Correct. Yeah, we typically will get a call, and then we will respond to that call. Usually, it's by geographic location or latitude, longitude, or whatnot. But when we're out looking for drugs, this is the time that we should be out talking to the public and creating that relationship with the public and doing boating safety education and checking to make sure that they have all of their equipment that is needed. And we could be doing that so that we don't at 2 in the morning get the phone call from the guy that we should have checked that didn't have his flares on board or his anchor on board, and now his engine stalled 3 miles offshore. So now we've got to go save him. And we could have looked earlier in the day, checked his stuff, and told him he needed to get it all fixed and taken care of.
Columbus Day Regatta, quite a number of years ago, Biscayne Bay. Coast Guard came, boarded our little sailboat, and trust me, they checked lights, paperwork, life preservers, and they found a little problem. I don't remember what it was, something like, all the life preservers soaked and sank. But no, it wasn't that. But they found something, and I know my reaction, thank you. You're trying to save my life. I think that's a really nice thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That should be one of our primary. I mean, it should be our primary job is to go out there and be that tool for the public to help them get educated on boater safety and be there for them in that time. I mean, and to protect them in other law enforcement aspects. But I don't see spending countless hours and millions of dollars in tax dollars, looking for drugs as anything that's going to protect the public. And we've seen that, with 40-plus years of prohibition where, drugs are still coming to this country at an all-time rate, and we're not stopping it.
No, we're not slowing it down. But we're keeping wakes on the inland waterways down a bit. That would help people. Whatever they're carrying, don't knock me down. And, we can laugh about that, but the fact is, the first time you're out there in a situation where patrolling Coast Guard, dealing with behavior on the waterway, might well save you from getting knocked over, or in a sailboat, knocked down. And it's really something to be avoided. And I don't care what's down in their hold. If they knock me over, I don't care. I'd rather they didn't do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's another part of our mission is to make sure that everybody's operating safely. And we most of our drug busts, actually, and I don't have the stats on it, but I would say that most of the drug busts or interdictions would probably be had while on normal patrols when they're out doing the boating safety. And yet we continue to spend so much added resources and money to do the other random patrols where we're not doing anything but burning holes in the water. And we're not doing patrols because we are bound to find this vessel if it exists or not.
Well, one thing that does exist is the need to pay our bills, so we're going to take a commercial break and make that happen, and then come back and pick up where we left off here at Time for Hemp. Listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Serious Seeds is your source for quality cannabis and sativa seeds. Serious Seeds are the creators of legendary strains like AK-47, Bubblegum, Chronic, Cali Mist, and White Russian. The AK-47 is probably the most awarded strain on the planet. The high THC content of AK-47 makes it the perfect medical strain for patients seeking quick pain relief. Cali Mist is an almost pure sativa. Female medical cannabis patients have reported that this strain helps relieve menstrual cramps. Serious Seeds just acquired another Dutch high-quality seed bank, Magus Genetics. From now on, Serious Seeds can offer you even more award-winning strains. The fine folks at Serious Seeds strive to breed the best cannabis genetics that they can find, so patients can rely on the effectiveness of their medicine. Go to SeriousSeeds.com to grow your medicine. That site again is SeriousSeeds.com.
Yes, stay alert with consciousness. Be aware of the world around you. Your freedoms stop when they begin to interfere with someone else's. That's just called courtesy. And if we all exercise that, there would be no need for a police state. Right, Your Honor?
I can't imagine a world in which anyone would not want a police state. We could have a Canada. Canada could build a wall.
That'd be
we
nice.
could build a wall across the Caribbean.
Cool.
and probably save some real trouble. Rent a little space from Cuba to mount some posts. I'm liking this wall idea, I think.
Well, I heard that if Trump gets elected, Mexico has promised to close their border. And I'm thinking, so what? They're still going to come over.
We'll starve to death.
When we're going to stop coming over is when when they legalize cannabis and start looking at drugs down in Mexico in a different way, because the cartel's got that country all locked up, and there's not a single civilian in that country that can get a fair shake, and that's why they want to come here.
Yep. Well, we are back with our chat. We've only got about 12 minutes left, so I'll let you guys get back to your time for hemping here on the big broadcast.
James Meissner, U.S. Coast Guard. Question.
Sir.
You've been in and out of inlets, Lauderdale, wherever. And have you been on those boats that escort the 1,000-foot cruise ships? I don't need to mention the brand names, the big ones.
I've actually. That was one of our primary tasks right after 9/11. Of course, we were on 24-hour, 7 days a week patrol every day, all day. So it was draining, but yes, that was one of our primary tasks. We escorted the cruise ships in and out of Mobile Harbor. We escorted any and all container ships, especially if they weren't documented. And if they weren't documented in the U.S., they had to sit offshore until they were cleared, and then we'd escort them in and out. We did that for years after 9/11. It was pretty arduous.
Now, it seems to me, being old enough to remember not World War II, but the stories of it, and I believe that loose lips sink ships. So what I don't want to ask you is, how big were those Coast Guard ships? How were they armed? Screw that. Somebody wants to know, they can figure out how to find it out, but I'm sure not going to help. Here is the question. Here is the question, though. Would it be fair to say that these escort heavily armed enough so one might well not want to pick a fight with them?
Oh, absolutely, yes. When we're on escorts like that, we typically will have a boarding team on the boat and then a vessel or two following and circling the boat, and everybody's armed. We have pistols to assault rifles to larger caliber weapons on the boat. So yeah, we definitely are very well armed. We always come with a plan. We always have an exit strategy, and we know where we're at. So we're definitely more well prepared than most that would be in that position. And, after 9/11,
yes.
There was what we called sea marshals, and you heard there were air marshals, and I was actually one of the first ones deputized as a U.S. sea marshal. That basically just gave us a little bit more authority. As the Coast Guard, we were acting under customs authority, but this would allow us a little bit more authority, like, say, if we were on land in acting under U.S. Marshal's authority. If we happened to take a boat to port and get off the boat, and then we're no longer acting under Coast Guard authority. So there was a lot of legality involved in that. But, that was pretty cool. I was actually a U.S. Marshal for a short time.
Interesting. And I have to tell you, from the high view, from some of the upper decks of the 1,000-footers, watching these escorts, I can tell you that what I thought I saw were people appropriately armed, paying attention. They were looking around like it mattered. Is that what you were saying too?
Absolutely, yeah. Semper paratus, that is our motto. We're always prepared, and that means making sure that you're aware of your surroundings and what's going on around you.
Makes sense to me. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the way that the cannabis legalization has been moving in the country. And like I said previously, I don't know if it was on the air, but I think with cannabis legalization is the downfall of the war on drugs. It accounts for at least half of the war on drugs currently in America. With regards to the money spent and the amount of people incarcerated, it's definitely up there. And, it's very hypocritical for the federal government to continue to say it has no medicinal use or that it's dangerous when, well over half the country lives in a state that has medicinal access to cannabis and no one's ever died from it. And once that ends, I think the war on drugs is going to come to a crashing end as well. And hopefully that's going to happen here next month. The DEA is looking to reschedule, and they're coming to make their decision known, I think, in July. So, that's the hope, and I think a lot of things are going to change in the next year.
And we know from this conversation that permits Coast Guard to focus more on what we all, I think, agree is what is and should be its primary mission. We
Absolutely,
take the violence, and I'm tempted to point towards the direction of kidnappings and killings of sailing vessels that people are lucky enough to be able to afford in the 30 to 90 foot range in the Caribbean. Does that result in crime? Is it just off Somalia?
Oh, I'm sure it happens everywhere. I didn't spend a lot of time in the Caribbean or offshore. Most of my duty stations were right along the coast, but I'm sure that happens everywhere. It's definitely part of the game.
I imagine that once again, in the vicinity of the coast, once again we're focusing on the rescue mission, the safety mission, because the bulk of the smaller boats, the 16-footers, the 38-footers, they're not, I'm guessing, you tell me if I'm wrong, but we're not talking boats that are 15 miles offshore. We're talking boats that are, half a mile offshore feeling adventurous, a mile off.
Right, or even in the, in the inlets and the tributaries and the bays and the rivers. We actually, anything that connects to a federal body of water, we patrol. So we actually go as far north as, miles up rivers into, probably 15, 20 miles north of Mobile, the actual city of Mobile, which is probably 30 or 40 miles from the actual sea buoy. So we're way up the river there, and, we go all the way up to Baton Rouge, up the Mississippi River. So, we're pretty much everywhere. Every body of water that connects between two states we're in.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's all federal waters. Any federal water, and that would mean any water that connects to all the Great Lakes, Salt Lake, Great Salt Lake, a lot of rivers that actually go out to bays or to the oceans. We'll follow those up as far as we can or as far as we need to.
So not only are you there for me on the ocean, you're there for me right up the Mississippi into the Great Lakes. So it's not just the sailor on the weekend sail on the way to the Bahamas or to Bimini, but it's the weekend fisher.
Yeah, that's the vast majority of our search and rescue cases. Is the recreational boater that's out doing some fishing locally and even inland, or somebody who's, like you said, just a mile or two offshore. That's the vast number of them, the majority of them. That's why keeping our presence out there is very important, and doing these patrols and safety patrols, and not just out there burning circles looking for one specific boat that may or may not exist.
Is it fair to say that if you can hear thunder, you're too close and shouldn't be on water?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I would say that you may be close to a storm, but I'd say if you're not experienced, then yes, that may be true. I would not take any chances.
So that would be the point at which you would start paying attention.
Absolutely, yeah. You definitely want to pay attention. And I'm looking outside right now, and it's starting to get funny you say that because it's getting really overcast. I was thinking about that. It's about to start raining.
Yesterday we had pink tornado skies. It was exciting. And we're not on the water.
I've been on the water where there was no warning whatsoever, and water spouts hit and followed us in the inlet, and we tied off the boat and jumped out and tried to run inside before it got to us, and it knocked one of my crewmen off into the water. It was crazy, but it had no warning that it was coming. It just hit.
I think it's fair to say that I wish I'd seen it.
It was wild. It was actually pretty scary.
Would it be fair to say that that's just the kind of situation where you might be happier if you were fully functioning and not just a little impaired functioning?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there are times to smoke, and then there are times to tie yourself in and know you're going to get wet.
Well, there are times when you got to wrap her up, and we're down to the end of the hour, so this is a great time to give a shout-out to your favorite URLs.
Oh, well, I appreciate you guys having me, and like I said, I'm a big proponent for cannabis legalization and hemp legalization here in America, and you can check my Facebook page out at facebook.com/One Plant Is All We Need, or you can check out the new website that just went live today where we have some great hemp products at www.oneplantisallweneed.com.
Cool.
And don't forget to check out Leap at leap.cc, cops say legalizedrugs.com.
And Your Honor?
The United States Coast Guard. Leap.cc, normal.org. The list goes on, but I do have a warm spot in my heart for the Coast Guard and what they do for us, and what we're hearing today, they would even be able to do more of if we would let them. They want to. Let's let them.
And how about My Canary, Your Honor?
I'm sorry?
How about My Canary?
My Canary, be responsible. Don't count drinks. Don't count joints. Look at your behavior. Look at your reaction time. My Canary app. One word, mycanaryapp.com.
And I want to remind people that we are a broadcasting team, about 20 of us here on the big network, letting the whole world know through iHeart, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, how important it is to end prohibition. And we ask that you share us with your friends. And remember, the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look and spend some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes.
Welcome to the 30 facts most people won't believe are facts. A blue whale's heart is the size of a Volkswagen Beetle and large enough that you could swim through its arteries. Most people are terrified by these, yet they walk by these every single day without fear. Yet vending machines kill 4 times as many people each year than sharks. The oldest person on Earth today was born closer to the signing of the U.S. Constitution than to today. The T183 calculator has 6 times more processing power than the computer that landed the Apollo 11 on the moon. 54 million people who are alive today will be dead in 12 months. The average human sheds 40 pounds of skin in their lifetime, replacing their entire outer skin once every month. In New York City, approximately 1,600 people are bitten annually by other people. I thought they called it the Big Apple, not the big human being. More than 2,500 left-handed people are killed every year by using equipment designed for right-handed people. Starfish can regrow their arms. In fact, a single arm can regenerate an entire body. Google founders were willing to sell Google to Excite in 1999 for $1 million. What did Excite do? They turned them down. The population of Ireland is still 2 million people less than it was before the Great Potato Famine 160 years ago. Jousting is the official sport of the state of Maryland. Multiple Marlboro men have died from lung cancer. Talk about a great role model. There is a garbage swirl in the Pacific Ocean the size of Texas. Believe it or not, you have a 1 in 200 chance of being related to Genghis Khan. When your mother was born, she was already carrying the egg that would become you. A mosquito has 47 teeth. The USA is older than Germany. Michael Jordan makes more money from Nike annually than all of the Nike workers in Malaysia combined. While working on Pac-Man, video game designer Toru Iwantiani was allegedly inspired by the shape of a pizza with one slice removed. The average hummingbird's heart rate is 1,200 beats per minute. Human beings share 50% of their DNA with bananas. In 30 minutes, the human body can give off enough heat to bring a gallon of water to a boil. Dolphins have names for each other and can call out for one another specifically. Cotton candy was invented by a dentist. Statistically speaking, you are more likely to become the President of the United States than you are to win the lottery. All you people who want to win the lottery, you might as well start campaigning right now. The final cost of the Afghanistan and Iraqi wars could reach over $6 trillion after war reparations. Sloths will mistakenly grab their own arms instead of the branches of a tree, which could lead to fatal falls. More people in the world currently suffer from obesity than from hunger.
Education and information. See what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp.